All right. So, like I said, in rounding up the discussion on the historical development of taxation in Nigeria, there's need to also look at the history of Nigeria's fiscal structure. Okay, we have to look at the history of Nigeria's fiscal structure, because since we have already understood taxes as you know, a concept that emanates by way of government imposing a payment responsibility on citizens. It means that the collector of taxes is government, and so it has to do with revenue, for government revenue, and every revenue of every government has a fiscal structure basis. So Nigeria has a fiscal structure basis as well, which it's also important to look at its history, so you can understand the structure through which these various tiers of government operate in collecting and responsibility to collect taxes. All right. So prior to the establishment of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, which as at today is the permanent government agency for the administration of revenue allocation and sundry fiscal matters under the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999. As of today, you had what we call ad hoc fiscal commissions operated. RAMFAC today, which is the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, is a permanent body constitutionally established today. But prior to RAMFAC, you had ad hoc fiscal commission. So in other words, in the past, what used to happen is that the Nigerian government, especially the federal government, will set up a ad hoc committee to advise on allocation and fiscal matters, especially between the federal, states and local governments. And then when that ad hoc committee concludes its assignment and makes its recommendations, it gets disbanded. Okay, so before we go into discussing these ad hoc committees that were historically set up for fiscal allocation in Nigeria, we need to note that there are two types of allocation. The importance of noting these forms and types of allocation is that in the course of discussing the ad hoc committees and their fiscal allocation principles, you have to understand these two types of allocation, because we are going to be mentioning these forms of allocation from time to time. Now you have what is called the vertical allocation, and then you have what is called the horizontal allocation. Now, vertical allocation is the allocation between the federal, state, and local government. All right, vertical allocation. For those biology students, I'm sure you know what they call the vertebrae of the human skeletal system. So, the vertical allocation, you have federal, state, and local government. And then you have the horizontal allocation, which is allocation between the states and local governments of Nigeria. So you have vertical, federal, state, local government, and then you have horizontal, which is state and local government allocation. All right. The first fiscal commission, ad hoc fiscal commission, set up in Nigeria for the purpose of advising the government on fiscal allocation principles, principles through which monies will be shared between the various regions of government, is the Philipson Commission of 1946. Okay, that's the first ad hoc taxation fiscal commission in Nigeria. Of course, from that date of 1946, you already know that it was a pre-colonial commission. All right, it was a pre-colonial commission, but Nevertheless, as at 1946, you already had partial involvement of Nigerians in the government of the colony of Nigeria at the time. All right. So now for the Philipson Ad hoc Commission, upon its inauguration, it concluded its assignment by recommending three principles of revenue allocation, which it referred to as derivation, even progress, and population principles. All right. So in other words, when I say principles of revenue allocation, we are talking about a basis upon which money is going to be shared. So they came up with three, which is they are going to do the sharing on the basis of derivation, that is, what is being produced in that particular region or local government or state, what is being produced there, that is adding to the general revenue of the country. So based on what is being produced from your territory, you are going to get something out of what you are producing, apart from the general pool of funds at the federal level. So that is the principle of derivation. Okay, sharing formula, allocation formula on the basis of what that particular territory is producing. Then the second one is the principle of even progress. All right, how do we, by principle of even progress, we are talking about the deliberate act of using allocation to balance progress amongst different territories in Nigeria. So if a particular territory is lagging behind in progress and developmental stride, allocation principles can be developed to send money to that particular weak territory so that it can match up or catch up or meet up with the other parts of the country. Okay, so for instance, among the various territories of Nigeria, if one territory is down in education, it may have more allocation to aid educational based funding and support so that it can catch up with the rest of the country in terms of number of children in schools, a number of scientists developed, medical doctors trained, lawyers trained, engineers trained, and so on and so forth. So that is what is referred to as the principle of even progress. When I say even, as in EVEN, even progress. And then the last revenue allocation principle for under the Philipson Commission was the population principles. All right. So the more your population, the more revenue is sent to you. Okay, that was the three principles that they came up with. But by way of implementation, because of at the time there was a problem of lack of sufficient statistical data to determine these three principles, the government only went with population principle, because for them at that time population principle was easy for them to you just know which region has more people and then you work with that. So the derivation principle and even progress principle were shelved by the colonial government of 1946. And so what came out as a result of the Philipson Commission's recommendation is that the northern region of Nigeria had 46% of allocation, western region had 30%, and eastern region had 24% in 1946. Okay, and then in 1951, another ad hoc fiscal commission and revenue allocation committee was set up, which was known as the Hicks-Philipson Commission of 1951. All right. Hicks-Philipson went another route in its own principles of allocation. All right. It came up with three also, but